The Orlando Magic got the unfortunate news that Franz Wagner could be out for an extended period of time, putting into question the season that already they've been missing Paolo Banchero. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the players that need to step up the most with Franz out. Plus, we're going to look at an NBA exec basically calling out DeMar DeRozan game and how it's affecting the Sacramento Kings. We'll talk about all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And I want to start off with this, man. So per Shams Charania today, Franz Wagner is going to be missing some times due to a torn oblique, which was suffered during Friday's game in a loss to the Philadelphia 76ers. And this is a devastating loss to the Orlando Magic. When you look at how the Orlando Magic have already been performing without Paolo Banchero for the majority of the season, it's been really amazing to see that the Magic have stayed towards the top of the Eastern Conference at 16-9, even with missing him for that extended period of time. But now when you look at it, he's going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks. That means at least a month at minimum will this team be without Franz Wagner. They've already been without Paolo Banchero since October 31st, in which he was stated that he was not going to be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks, which could be coming up soon. I think they expect him to be back around Christmas. So if at the worst Franz is out for an extended period of time, they're getting Paolo back maybe by the end of this month, the beginning of the new year, maybe at the latest. And so there's big questions here on how much they can stay afloat. Now, one of the benefits here is that they play in the Eastern Conference. And with how close everything is in that Eastern Conference, that the Orlando Magic, even if they were to nosedive in this time with Franz being out, if Paolo's going to be back in 3 to 4 weeks, it leaves, it's not, I want to put it, like, they can lose a lot of games over this amount of time, but it's not an amount of games that they can't pass up. And even more importantly than anything with that, the thing that the Orlando Magic have to do is that when Paolo gets back and Franz eventually makes his way back as well, you just want to avoid the play-in, right? You just want to avoid that because, again, in the play-in, even if you're the better team, it just takes one team, one game to get hot, and then you're out. So if they can just avoid the play-in, which is being in the top 6, I think that's enough. You look at the Milwaukee Bucks, where their season started, they're now at 11-11, 500, which has them at the 6th seed. So, the separation there, it's not like it's going to be an insurmountable deficit, but you just don't want to. You want to avoid that where you can. But at this point, Paolo's out. So now the question that I want to answer here and talk about is who needs to step up the most with now Paolo and Franz being out. And the first player that I got to bring up to it is Jalen Suggs. You just got to look at it. He's 23 years old. He's averaging 15.5 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 1.5 steals per game, and he's shooting 41% from the field and 32% from three. And you need him to elevate his game a lot when it comes down to it. And he's had some really big games so far this season. You look at the 31 points he scored against the Chicago Bulls early in the season as well. So it's not like we have not seen Jalen Suggs, step outside and score a little bit more. But, yes, he's not a scorer. Yes, his defense is kind of the thing that really is premier about Jalen Suggs. But the Magic are going to need Suggs to really step up and perform even better than what he has. He's already kind of taken a step offensively this year. I think when you look at him averaging the most points in his career while only taking 4 more shots, he's going to get a lot more shots in this case. You're going to really need him to step up and continue to be that two-way player, but a little bit more offense as well. The next player up that I think really needs to stand out and play better in this absence is Wendell Carter Jr. What has happened to Wendell Carter? I know he's only played in 12 games, I think, so far this season, but he's averaging a career low in points per game at only 7.7. He's tied for the 3rd worst rebounding numbers of his career as well at 7.8 rebounds per game. And he's shooting the ball, 50% from the field, but he's taking on average 5 shots per game. So you really want to see Wendell Carter perform much better for the Orlando Magic in a time where Franz is out. And if he can, I'm not saying that Wendell needs to all of a sudden be some 20-10 guy, but if he can get back to what he was in 2022-23 with 15 points, 8.7 rebounds, and him and Jalen Suggs can both kind of step up and stand out offensively and on both sides of the ball, it can really help this Magic team, again, stay afloat. We're not expecting them to keep at the same pace that they were playing with Franz there, but they can just stay afloat to win enough games to not completely nosedive into the season. And I don't think it's outside the realm of reality or fairness to say that the Magic can use Wendell Carter to step up considerably for this team over this absence. He's going to get more shots naturally. He just has to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy and on the court, Wendell Carter can offer a lot for this Magic team that's going to be missing Franz, who's been averaging 24 points per game. If they can kind of spread that out between them and some of the other players I'm going to mention, that could definitely help a lot. The next player I want to talk about is KCP. And KCP is really kind of thrust into a position that he's actually been in his career before. If you look at when he was with the Lakers in the 2020-21 season, there was a period of time with LeBron James and Anthony Davis went down and missed some significant time there. And that was a time where James missed 27 games, Anthony Davis missed 36 games. And so as a veteran and leader in his two-way play, the Lakers were able to rely on KCP. Now, he's an older player now, of course, but they brought him here to be that two-way presence for the Orlando Magic. And we're not asking him to all of a sudden be some world beater or anything like that. But if you just look at it, like he's shooting 39% from the field and 29% from three. The 29% from three is the worst marks of his career. If KCP can get more like what he did last year for Denver, averaging 10 points per game on 46% shooting and 40% from three-point range, that helps this team a lot. The defense has already came along for KCP. He's been that defensive presence for them. We know what the Magic and their reputation is already defensively, but if KCP can give a little bit more offensively and just up that number to more 10, 11 points per game over this stretch, it can definitely help the Orlando Magic, again, stay afloat. That's the key thing that we're looking at here, is stay afloat. We're not looking for anybody to replace exactly what Franz brings to the court. We're just looking for that little bit of help. The next guy on here that I'm going to bring up is actually a young guy who's only in, the second year of his career, I believe, and that's Anthony Black. And you look at what Anthony Black has done from his rookie year to this sophomore year, playing more minutes, playing more games for the Orlando Magic team. He's played 25 games and started one, averaging 24 minutes per game, up from his 17 minutes per game last season. That can see an even bigger uptick now with Franz being out and just, I know he doesn't play the same position as Franz, but there's going to be a different minutes distribution as all, while they may have to play small or play some players at different positions. He's shooting okay, 41% from the field, 25% from three, which is not good, but he's averaging 8 points per game, 4 assists, two rebounds, and almost 3 rebounds, and then almost a steal per game. And I'm not saying that you need him to step up hugely offensively, but you're going to need a bigger him to possibly carry a bigger workload defensively for this team and just overall step up as a player. And I think that Anthony Black has a lot of potential. That's why the Magic drafted him. And so when you look at what he did against Phoenix, where he had 20 points, 9 assists, 3 steals, he's shown the ability that he can score when needed and take advantage. And then you look at it before, he followed that up with 17 points and 8 assists. So it's really just about consistency for Anthony Black. And this is a time where you've already had other young players step up over the years for the Orlando Magic. This is really a time for Anthony Black to really step up. And so, he has to be more aggressive. There's been periods of time where he's taken a total of 17 shot attempts over 2 games. So you need him to be really, really better in this case for the Orlando Magic. And if he can, again, it can help them. That's the key here. Stay afloat. That's really what you're looking at in a case like this. So, the Magic are a really good team, and I think that they are ahead of schedule. Now, I don't necessarily have them as a big threat to come out the Eastern Conference, but again, when you're down like this, it really can help you later on in the playoff run that you've had to have players that to step up and play outside themselves. So can they get that, right? Jonathan Isaac is another guy as well, defensively especially, that he's going to need to cover even more ground for this team. We know what he can be for this team defensively as well, but those are the players that I'm really looking at stepping up. And, overall, the role players as a whole, I almost put Tristan da Silva on this list as well, as he's averaging 23 minutes per game. But as a rookie, it's a little bit lot to put on a player. But you look at Tristan da Silva, he was one of the kind of more NBA-ready prospects coming into this draft, with him already being 23 years old. And he's a player that kind of, if you look at skill set-wise, he's not the same caliber of player of Franz Wagner. I want to be clear there. He's not the same caliber at all. He hasn't proved anything that. But when you look at skill set, if you're looking at anybody to kind of replicate what Franz is able to do on the court to a much lesser degree, Tristan da Silva could possibly be that guy for the Orlando Magic. He is averaging 7 points per game already in his rookie year. over those 23 minutes, shooting the ball 43% from the field, 33% from three. He's getting 4 rebounds per game and almost 2 assists. So if he can kind of, again, just step up a little bit in all aspects of it and play really good team basketball, there's a lot to think that Tristan da Silva is another player that can also step up and help this Orlando Magic team. But overall, the Magic are, again, just looking to stay. I know that's a buzzword. I keep using it. Just to stay afloat. Do I expect them to stay number 3 in the Eastern Conference over this stretch? No. But I tell you what, I didn't necessarily expect the Orlando Magic to be even in the top 3 once Paolo went down. So you never know what and how people are going to really step into roles when they're called on and need to be relied on and do more. And that's really up now to these players as a whole, as a collective, to really step in and fill in that gap to just keep that team from completely going into a complete nosedive, at least until Paolo's able to come back. Once Paolo's back, I feel pretty confident about this team's ability to stay towards that top of the Eastern Conference. Again, and talking about top 6, and then wait for Franz to come back, and then they can finish off this season strong. But regardless of all of that, the Orlando Magic are still ahead of schedule in the pace of their development. But this is a team to keep looking out for in the Eastern Conference. Let me know down below. Who do you guys think needs to step up for the Orlando Magic while Franz is out and before Paolo comes back? And how many wins do you think they can get on? Do you think they can stay in that top 6, or do you think they could very well fall into that play-in area and then have to fight themselves back out of it once everybody gets back healthy? Let me know how you guys feel on that down below. Now, before we go, I got one more topic that I want to get into, and this is in regards to DeMar DeRozan. Now, former Bull, you guys may know, Bull's head behind me, Bears head on the other side of me. I'm a Chicago guy, right? So DeMar DeRozan is a player that played for the Chicago Bulls for the last 3 seasons prior to this season. And the DeMar DeRozan acquisition by the Kings, I understood what the Kings were trying to do, right? There's always kind of that buffer where you have to learn to play with DeMar. DeMar is such a specific player that when you look at it, their pace is down when DeMar's on the court because you have to. He's not a player that likes to play in transition. He doesn't like to play off ball. So you have to really kind of adapt to the skill set to just get the most out of DeMar DeRozan. And it seems like some executives are kind of doubting what DeMar DeRozan can do and kind of blaming him for why the Kings have been struggling. This comes from, a couple of different people. First, Tim Bontemps says some NBA executives believe that DeMar DeRozan's fit with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis has contributed to the Sacramento Kings' sub-500 start this season. And when you also look at it, Windhorse added this: DeRozan is a highly skilled player who is great to have in the locker room and a guy you want to give the ball to at the end of the game. But his play hasn't driven winning, and it's something that unfortunately has been the case throughout his career, and is part of why he's changed teams a bunch. Now, DeMar hasn't changed teams a bunch. I want to be clear. I think that wording is a little bit unfair. He was traded to the Spurs because they wanted Kawhi Leonard. They took advantage of Kawhi winning the trade. They won a title because of it. He stayed with the Spurs, then moved on to the Chicago Bulls at a time where it seemed not a lot of teams wanted him, right? He ends up signing with the Bulls. He stays there for 3 years. He breaks Wilt Chamberlain records over that time. The Bulls end up going younger with their roster. That forces him to go to the Kings. Every time, except leaving the Spurs, that DeMar has left the team, basically, it's been because the team has changed their mind, not necessarily just DeMar, right? So I get it. He has had to change. And teams have not been able to get over the hump with DeMar. The Bulls weren't able to get over the hump of the plans being in the playing area, despite besides his first year there. The Raptors weren't able to get over that hump to get to the NBA Finals with DeMar being there. So I understand some of the criticism and critique around DeMar, absolutely. But then when you look at it, DeMar DeRozan, 22.7 points per game as a King. They're 10-13 right now on the season as of this recording. And then when you also look at it, the Kings are a better team when he's on the court, per the statistics. And this is kind of why you always got to pair everything with the eye test and give everything together. But when you look at it, the Kings currently have a positive 1.4 point differential when he's on the court. When he's off the court, it's worse than that. When DeMar DeRozan is off the court, for example, the Kings have a plus-minus differential of -3. Then when you look at the points per 100 possessions, they're scoring 5.5 points per 100 possessions better when DeMar DeRozan is on the court for the Sacramento Kings. It just is what it is there, right? So, yeah, like, DeMar is having a positive impact for the Kings offense. Now, defensively, we all know who DeMar DeRozan is defensively. Teams are averaging 4.1 points more per 100 possessions when DeMar DeRozan is on the court for the Sacramento Kings. That's actually the highest mark of his career since the 2000 and 2021 season. So overall, the impact that DeMar DeRozan has is that you have to change your game, right? And the stats are always going to kind of be favorable for DeMar because he excels so much at what he's good at that it's always going to show up positively in the stat sheet, right? But you have to look at how you have to play. And this is a Kings roster that is built to play fast, but they are forced themselves to slow down once DeMar DeRozan is on the court. It just is what it is. When DeMar DeRozan is off the court, for example, the Kings play with the pace of almost 100. When he's on the court, it's 98.2. So it's again, it's a minuscule change there, but it is a change. And that's what you have to look at for as well as like not just you have to look at it outside of just the stats that DeMar DeRozan provides and really look at it as how does it affect how your team plays. That is always what you have to view DeMar DeRozan as, is how your team has to play while he's on the court, and then how successful is that style for the rest of your roster. And that's what this team is going to have to figure out. The Sacramento Kings, not that I ever really had them as a team that was going to come out the Western Conference or anything like that, but I do think at being 11-13 now on the season, as I correct myself, that it's disappointing because they expected more and they looked like a team that was on the rise. Anytime you're on the rise and things stop, you start looking at who to blame and where to point the finger at. And so with Keegan Murray down 12.4 points per game, you got Malik Monk 16.3 points per game. Of course, there's going to be some necessary questions asked about what is causing this change for this team. Is it just DeMar DeRozan? And I think it's kind of unfair to blame one player, but to be honest and look at it from all sides, like you have to look at what changed. And DeMar DeRozan is the catalyst that really has changed drastically for what this team is right now. And so they're going to have to look at that and try to make some decisions on what they're going to do. And we'll see what happens there. We will see if the Kings figure this out. Like I said, there's always kind of that buffer time where you have to learn how to play with DeMar. And if you can come out on the other side of that in the positive area, then good, great, right? That's wonderful. But that's not always going to be the case. And this Kings team may be forcing, especially at a time period where De'Aaron Fox turned down a contract extension. He signed with Clutch Sports. The Kings have some very tough questions that they have to ask themselves. Now, maybe I don't want to fearmonger or anything like that. It could very well be possible that De'Aaron Fox re-signs with the Kings because they can offer him the most money and they're good to go. They just figure out, how to better supplement what they have on this roster to get the most out of it. But when you're a team and you see your team take that was on an uptick, and the Kings were fun, right? Like the Kings were just fun. And so, when you look at this as well, now the betting sites, for example, have the Orlando Magic as the favorite to acquire De'Aaron Fox. Now, my question is what does that mean for Jalen Suggs? But when it comes down to it, they're plus 400 when it comes down to it. But that's the betting sites. Sportsbook are going to sportsbook to have things for people to bet on. But it does raise some serious questions. And the Kings got to try to figure this thing out. Because if De'Aaron Fox does end up wanting out because this team has taken a step back, at that point, you got to ask yourself, was it worth it? Was it worth it, right? To make a sign and trade for DeMar DeRozan if you end up losing your star, losing your player that you're building around. You still have Sabonis, and Sabonis is still amazing, and he's great, and maybe you can find something to add to that. But, while the Magic may look for something out in the trade market, and I can understand why the thought process there, we just talked about the Magic as well. I don't think that if we had to think if the Kings are going to look to move De'Aaron Fox, I don't necessarily see it happening. I don't see it happening. Now, weirder things in the NBA has happened. I want to be clear there. They wouldn't be the first team to make a move, and then it ends up costing them that their best player wants out. They wouldn't be the first ones to want that. But I think right now it's a little premature to try to predict that, right? Because this Kings team could still turn it around. Now, I think in the Western Conference is a lot more difficult, but you have one more year of De'Aaron Fox's contract left. He's under contract for $37 million next season. And you better, if this season does end up being a failure, the Kings are going to have to go to the drawing board and try everything in their power to figure out how to convince De'Aaron Fox to stay there. They got Sabonis locked in until the 2027-28 season. Through that season, you got Malik Monk through the season before that. So you got some players locked in there. Keegan Murray would need his rookie contract extension by then. Kevin Huerter, he's up for a restricted free agent at the end of the 27 season. So you got those things, but this all has to be built around. And it's funny because it's like the Kings have put themselves in the same position that the Chicago Bulls were in, right? The Bulls signed DeMar DeRozan to try to convince Zach LaVine to stay, right? They went out, traded for Vooch. They got Lonzo Ball. They got Alex Caruso. They did a whole revamp of the roster because they saw Zach LaVine was coming up, and they wanted to make sure that they put him in the best situation to convince him to stay. Then him signing him to the biggest contract in franchise history, don't really have much success. And so the signing of DeMar DeRozan and the subsequent maybe moving of him or moving off of him could be tantamount to what they got to figure out here. So we'll see what happens there. But let me know your guys' thoughts on all that down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. And I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.